I, Eddard of the House Stark, Lord of Winterfell and Warden of the North, sentence you to die.
It's an old Stark philosophy that the man who passes the sentence should swing the sword. And it really goes to the root of who Ned Stark is as a man and who the Starks are as a family.
You understand why I did it?
Oh, where's the old boy?
The Stark ethos is very much about doing things yourself and about leadership by example.
Ned is really the kind of the cornerstone of the first season. He's the center of gravity around whom events move for the most part.
The king rides for Winterfell.
He's coming this far north. There's only one thing he's after.
Ned Stark, the Lord of Winterfell, grew up with Robert Baratheon, who went on to become king.
They were raised from a relatively early age as brothers for all intents and purposes, and they grew up together and they learned to drink together and chase girls together, and they went to war together.
You got fat.
The only reason in the world why Robert would make this journey is because he needs a new hand, and who else would he turn to but his oldest friend, his best friend, his most trusted confidant, Ned Stark.
I need you, Ned. You helped me win the Iron Throne, now help me keep the fucking thing.
May I present my honored guests, Viserys of House Targaryen, the third of his name, the rightful king of the Andals and the First Men, and his sister, Daenerys of House Targaryen.
Daenerys Targaryen, his nickname is Dany, basically went into exile from her homeland when she was so small she doesn't even remember it. She is the youngest child of the Mad King, Aerys Targaryen.
She's never known her father, she's never known her family, she's never known her homeland. The only thing she's ever known has been her brother. She's been raised by her brother, Viserys, and Viserys has had his eyes on one thing and one thing only, and that is on regaining the throne that was taken from his father.
When they write the history of my reign, sweet sister, they will say it began today.
And she's had no stability in her life. The only constant has been this brother, Viserys. So even though he is a cruel and sadistic older brother, and even though he's really quite abusive to her, it's all she knows. And she's been forced to, if not trust him, at least to follow his wishes, because not doing so would just lead to more abuse.
You don't want to wake the dragon, do you?
Like a lot of characters in the show, she's looking for an identity and a larger purpose in life. I think there's something deep inside her that's asleep, that's there, that she acknowledges, and you see her start to acknowledge it. Certainly when she's thrown in with the Dothraki and she's presented with the eggs, the dragon eggs, you could see this thought process starting, that there is something larger out there that I'm supposed to be a part of. I think she's on board for going back to the kingdom and to finding out about her culture and to having a home.
You're Ned Stark's bastard, aren't you?
Jon Snow has grown up at Winterfell with the other Starks, but he's not himself a Stark, he's a bastard. So Jon has gone through life at a disadvantage, despite the fact that he's grown up with a noble family and with certain privileges that come with that. He is not one of them.
This has, I think, understandably caused Jon to grow up with a chip on his shoulder.
Run to the litter. That one's yours, Snow.
Jon doesn't have a future. Jon will kind of live the rest of his life at the mercy of his brothers, and he has a very strong relationship with his brothers, especially with Robb, but there's still that nagging feeling that he doesn't belong and that there's no real future for him here.
Handsome one, isn't he? I lost my first boy, little black-haired beauty. He was a fighter too. Tried to beat the fever that took him. Forgive me.
That scene, more than any other scene, probably speaks to the complexity of who Cersei is as a person and as a character, where she can be telling the story and actually eliciting this sympathy from you while you're watching the story. You're like, wait a minute, and you can forget what it was she participated in that led her to be in this room with this crippled boy in a coma telling the story in the first place.
She's always manipulative. At the same time, I believe her that she was distraught at the death of her son, and you can be two things at once. And I think that's one of the things that makes her a compelling character, is she's very complicated.
Such a little thing. Bird without feathers.
She is inscrutable. You know, you never know what she's thinking or what her motives are. And I don't know that it was so much of a manipulation. Yeah, I think there was some underhanded stuff happening there and obviously some lying. But there was like a great moment there, a humanizing moment for the character.
I pray to the mother every morning and night that she return your child to you. Perhaps this time she'll listen.
Why'd you read so much?
My brother has a sword, and I have my mind. And a mind needs books like a sword needs a whetstone.
The way Tyrion talks about it, which makes sense, is that his older brother Jaime is a great sword fighter. And Jaime is famous, you know, he's probably one of the most talented knights in the Seven Kingdoms. And because of that, he's brought glory to the Lannister house. Tyrion obviously can't claim any of that. He's never going to win a tournament. He's never going to do anything particularly impressive physically. That's not a gift he has. But what he does have is a really powerful brain. He's very smart. And so rather than trying to be something that he isn't, he chooses to try to accentuate what he does have and make his brain that much more powerful.
Tyrion is an intellectual and reads voraciously, and he likes to see what the world has to offer, and there's kind of nothing more amazing in this world than a very high wall of ice built by people thousands of years ago. He's kind of less interested in the intrigues and the courtly comings and goings than he is in things that he probably sees as having more ultimate value.
The greatest structure ever built, the intrepid men of the Night's Watch,
The wintry abode of the White Walkers.
There's great honor serving in the Night's Watch. The Starks have manned the wall for thousands of years.
Ned is not an emotionally demonstrative person. He isn't somebody who tells his children that he loves them on a regular basis, even though he does, and he think he loves Jon, even though he probably says it even less often to Jon because there are just so few opportunities where that kind of confession is appropriate.
You might not have my name, but you have my blood.
This is the only viable place for Jon to go, and that's what it's about for Ned. It really is about what he perceives as best for Jon, even though he knows full well that the Night's Watch is no picnic.
Jon's grown up with the stories about the Night's Watch and their heroism and this kind of chivalric idea in his mind that they are the defenders of the North and these noble warriors protecting those in the South from monsters and so forth. The reality of the Night's Watch, especially now, is that they've fallen upon hard times. So Jon Snow has a kind of outdated notion of what life at the Wall is really like.
The Night's Watch protects the realm.
Ah, yes. Against grumpkins and snarks and all the other monsters your wetness warned you about. You're a smart boy. You don't believe that nonsense.
Jon at the beginning of 3 probably takes Jon a while to get to the realization that he's lucky compared to most people. At the beginning of the episode, all that he can really see is that he's much, much better at almost everything than this collection of losers he's been surrounded with, and he doesn't understand why that doesn't entitle him to more privileges than they have.
They hate me because I'm better than they are.
It's a lucky thing none of them were trained by master-at-arms like your Sir Roderick. I don't imagine any of them have ever held a real sword before they came here.
It's with Tyrion's help that he comes to understand that he is better than these people because he's in fact been very, very lucky in the grand scheme of things.
I think one of the important lessons that Jon Snow is forced to reckon with is that he's grown up his whole life with this chip on his shoulder. He's grown up believing that he's someone who's been treated unfairly. And then one day he joins a group of people who have lived monstrously more difficult lives than he ever has. So John didn't have the easiest life because he was, a bastard growing up with his family, but at the same time, he's a rich kid. I mean, he grew up in a castle. So John's forced to realize that as hard as he thought his life was, there are many, many people out there who have had it much worse than he has.
Take care, Snow. Farewell, my lord.
He has to learn that the hard way, but he learns that lesson, and he probably ends up a much better person for it.
One of Dany's characteristics that comes to be incredibly important as the story progresses is her hatred of slavery. And I think part of the reason she has great sympathy for slaves is that she's grown up in a situation where she's had no power. She's basically been forced to follow the whims of her brother her entire life.
I am Lord of the Seven Kingdoms. I don't take orders from savages or their sluts.
Dany has a great deal of sympathy for those who are in difficult circumstances, for those who are the weak and the oppressed, and it comes to be really one of the most compelling things about her as a character.
I mean, she's been property for all intents and purposes. She's been her brother's slave, and so I think she has an affinity for these people, and she can actually look at these people and start to think about what their lives are like, maybe feel the empathy with them that is natural to somebody who's sort of a slave herself. And I think that she really kind of starts to realize that being somebody else's property is no good, and starts to show the beginnings of the impulse towards freedom that end up playing a much bigger role in her life and in the lives of the people around her as her story progresses.
Enough of that, young lady. Eat your food.
I'm practicing.
Practicing for what?
The prince.
Arya's grown up in a world where the roles that are set aside for girls are very limited and definitely do not involve wielding swords.
What's happening here?
Arya would rather act like a beast than a lady.
The sword is kind of an embodiment of everything that matters to her that she's not allowed to engage with, and when her father finds her with the sword and then says it's okay for her to keep the sword, it's really, it's a huge moment for her.
If you're going to own a sword, you better know how to use it.
She's really being told in a way like, I'm the person who is the master of your fate, and I am going to let you become the person you were meant to be, or at least far more of that person than you ever thought was ever going to be a real possibility for you.
How many times do I have to tell you? You do not command me.
I wasn't commanding you.
You are a horse lord slut, and now you've woken the dragon.
Daenerys lashes out at her brother. It's just something that's been building up inside her probably for years and years, as long as she can remember.
The next time you raise a hand to me will be the last time you have hands.
She comes to realize that he's a fool. He thinks that he's going to go back and reconquer the Seven Kingdoms. He couldn't conquer anything. He can't even beat her in a fight.
My brother will never take back the Seven Kingdoms.
She comes to believe that she's heir to the Iron Throne. She sees within herself a power that she wasn't even aware existed.
Now pivot as you deliver the stroke, with all your weight behind it. What in seven hells is that?
Jon Snow sees Samwell, this kid who's never really fought anyone in his life, and it sickens him because the kid's defenseless.
Once Jon sees somebody weak being bullied and beaten on, he feels honor bound to stop it.
Looks like the bastard's in love.
Jon Snow's a natural leader. People want to follow him because they have a sense that he knows what he's doing, and he does.
He sees Alistair Thorne, who trains these boys as a cruel officer.
You think this is funny to you?
He's like that high school teacher who's just been teaching high school for too long, and it's just seeing the high school go down the tubes, and it's just stopped caring.
When you're out there, beyond the wall with the sun going down, do you want a man at your back or a sniveling boy?
Jon realizes that he can give these other boys better training than they're getting otherwise. He wants to have highly trained soldiers by his side, and now they become his friends, so he wants them to succeed. And Samwell becomes Jon's best friend. For several of the characters, there's a growing disillusionment when they realize that the real world doesn't mesh at all with the stories they've been told from childhood. Sansa Stark comes to learn that princes aren't always so charming. and that knights aren't always pure-hearted and chivalric, and in fact, it's a brutal, bloody business.
Start the damn joust before I piss myself.
For Sansa, this is the epitome of like what she's dreamed of. Finally, she gets to see the King's tournament in honor of her father, with the King sitting right behind her, and it's hard to feel bad for Sansa. There's all these situations where she's getting everything she ever hoped for, and it just always ends badly.
Reading about jousts as these kind of gorgeous displays of skill and horsemanship, she realizes that the truth is much messier and more savage. It's a disillusionment that continues for Bran Stark, who learns that he's never going to walk again.
What he doesn't realize is the possibility that his legs were taken away from him, but in exchange he got something else.
Certain things have changed within him. But there are certain visions where he's starting to see things that he shouldn't be able to see. One of the visions that he has is of this three-eyed raven, which comes to be an incredibly important symbol of who he is and where he's going.
The Eastern Road. We're going to the Vale.
You're taking me to your sisters to answer for my imagined crimes. Tell me, Lady Stark, when was the last time you saw your sister?
5 years ago.
She's changed. You might as well kill me here.
When Catelyn kidnapped Tyrion, that's like a declaration of war against the richest family in the world.
If Tywin Lannister finds out that his youngest son has been brought to the Eyrie and is being held prisoner there are likely to be repercussions.
Lysa, you wrote me about the Lannisters, warning me to stay away from them, not to bring one here.
When Catelyn shows up with a Lannister there, Lysa's furious about it. She fled King's Landing to get away from the Lannisters because, as far as she's concerned, the Lannisters killed her husband. She believes they're trying to overthrow the king and seize power.
This man is my prisoner. I will not have him harmed.
Catelyn and her sister were very close when they grew up together, but Catelyn hasn't seen her sister in a long time.
There have been conflicts between the two of them going back to childhood, and now she's a strange woman.
The surface Game of Thrones is fought with swords and horses and weapons, but the game that Littlefinger and Varys play is every bit as important.
Littlefinger is dangerously charming, but mainly dangerously dangerous.
How have you been since we last saw each other?
Since you last saw me, or since I last saw you?
They are constantly up to something, and you generally don't know half of what they're doing. You know, there are all sorts of conspiracies and wheels within wheels.
I distinctly recall seeing you talking to Lord Stark in his chambers.
Was that you under the bed?
They're obviously antagonists, but they also have a real respect for each other.
We're friends, aren't we, Lord Varys?
Please.
And they're actually up to very different things. Littlefinger is fiercely ambitious, and despite his humble origins, he wants to rise as far as possible. And Varys, on the other hand, despite the fact that he is considered this scheming eunuch, weirdly, he wants what's best for the realm.
I want him dead. Mother and child, both.
You'll dishonor yourself forever if you do this.
Ned is very anti-child murder. He sees Daenerys Targaryen as a child and an innocent. And Robert is very pro whatever needs doing to preserve his supremacy.
Do nothing. That's your wise advice. Do nothing till our enemies are on our shores.
Robert can't believe that his hand is being so insubordinate. He's supposed to do what the king asks him to do, no matter what it is. And so the idea this is not honorable to kill, you know, Robert just thinks that's kind of silliness and it's all fancy talk, and that the truth of it is that you have to do all sorts of horrible things if you're going to rule the kingdoms.
I will have no part in it.
And this is the tipping point for Ned. His loyalty to Robert has reached its limit, and he quits. He just decides he can't be party to what's going on in King's Landing anymore.
Jaime has found out that Catelyn Stark has seized Tyrion Lannister and taken him prisoner. This provocation gives him a justification to attack Ned Stark, which he's been looking for the whole time.
If you threaten my lord again... As in, I'm going to open your lord from balls to brains and see what Starks are made of.
Ned Stark is a famous warrior, so Jaime sees him as like a natural opponent. He just wants to get him out there on the field so they can test each other's mettle and see who's the better man.
You kill me. Your brother's a dead man.
It's a little bit like the two gunslingers in a Western who have been circling each other from the beginning of the movie, and you know they're going to fight at some point. You just don't know how it's going to turn out.
Attacking Ned Stark in the streets of King's Landing is one of the first steps you would take on the road to declaring warfare. When the fight starts to happen, Jaime realizes that when Ned fights a man for real, he fights a man for real, and Jaime starts to realize that his life is in danger here, and it becomes a fight to the death.
They're pretty evenly matched, and it's anyone's guess who would have won if the fight hadn't been abruptly terminated.
My family is rich. We have gold, lots of gold. I'm prepared to give you lots of gold. Now go! Well, I don't have it here. Now go!
Episode 6 is really where the roller coaster hits the top of the hill and starts speeding downhill.
The Starks are in trouble because Catelyn Stark has abducted Tyrion Lannister and all diplomacy is out the window. The Sky Cell was a way to torture prisoners without actually having to do much to them. You just put them in this room with a sloping floor and feel as if you're about to roll to your doom.
The Sky Cells always break.
Tyrion's that person that everybody wants to be. He's the person who can walk into a situation that's dire and that would make us all nervous and stumbling and fumbling and actually make fun of people who are threatening to throw him out a window.
I demand trial by combat.
He's intentionally embarrassing Lysa in front of dozens of people watching this, and it allows Tyrion to have his moment.
Do I have a volunteer?
The call for volunteers is pretty desperate, but he was smart enough to at least give himself a fighting chance of finding somebody to do his fighting for him.
Tyrion's planted the seeds of greed in this sellsword named Bronn. He sees this as a big opportunity to better his life, and he takes it.
When he fights Ser Vardis, he wears no armor. Ser Vardis is fighting in a conventional way, where with full armor, a shield, a sword, and the whole 9 yards. And he tires him out. He lets him chase him around until finally he sees his window of opportunity and pushes him down the hole. The person who has the most to lose in that scene is Catelyn, because Tyrion was the one thing that she had over the Lannisters. Catelyn and Ned make these fatal mistakes.
They butchered our children as if they was animals.
That sounds like someone we know.
Littlefinger is sort of goading Ned. He's winding him up, and he's playing him. And what Littlefinger's trying to do is incite Ned into making this brash decision. The powerful are not allowed to abuse the weak in Ned's vision of the world. That kind of behavior has to be punished.
I cannot restore your dead to life, but perhaps I can give you justice.
Ned orders Tywin Lannister to come to court and answer for the crimes of his bannermen, and that's basically what triggers the war.
Inform Tywin Lannister that he has been branded an enemy of the crown and a traitor to the realm.
He knows that this puts him and his family in a really vulnerable position.
I'm sending you both back to Winterfell.
What? I'm supposed to marry Prince Joffrey. I love him, and I'll give him sons with beautiful blonde hair.
Sansa inadvertently puts together all the pieces in Ned's head that he's been accumulating from the beginning of the show.
Ned at this point has seen a few of Robert's bastards. All of them have black hair, and all of them are, kind of look like Robert. Joffrey doesn't look anything like his supposed father. He's really not a Baratheon at all. He's just pure Lannister.
Daenerys comes into the Dothraki horde as an outsider, and a lot of her story up to this point has been her finding her place in that world.
Eating the stallion's heart becomes a symbol that she is actually carrying the person who's going to be the savior of the Dothraki people.
This is really the place where in front of the tribe, she becomes one of them. She disconnects from her brother, and her brother sees that, and then that in turn kind of pushes him over the edge.
Viserys, please.
any importance, any love or respect that she draws from these people is respect that he's not going to be getting. So he's alarmed.
After he threatens her unborn child and he puts a sword point on her pregnant belly, and from that point on he's dead to her. I mean, quite literally dead to her.
A crown for a king.
When Viserys gets his golden crown, you can see in her face that it doesn't mean anything to her.
He was no dragon. Fire cannot kill a dragon.
She doesn't look like a little girl anymore.
Bend the knee, my lord. Bend the knee and swear loyalty to my son.
Your son has no claim to the throne.
Kill all of them, I command you!
Traditionally, in a typical genre book, characters are punished for their evil actions and rewarded for their good actions. But in this grim world, you are punished for your good actions and often rewarded for your evil ones, which seems much more a reflection of the real world. Ned's an honorable man, and his honor gets him in trouble. And Cersei is a ruthless, lying, scheming woman, and those schemes and that ruthlessness actually serves her in good stead.
Do you love your children?
With all my heart.
No more than I love mine.
And they're all Jaime's.
She doesn't deny it. She says, well, what would you have done if you were me? And these two people who are so completely opposite and have such different values kind of meet in this weird way.
So wherever you go, Robert's wrath will follow you.
And what of my wrath, Lord Stark?
She doesn't feel the need to hide what she is, knowing that Ned's not going to go around telling everybody because Ned's too honorable to, shout it from the rooftops that Cersei has been sleeping with her twin brother.
When you play the Game of Thrones, you win or you die.
She's in this environment where men are constantly terrified of other men who have more power than they do, yet no one thinks to be equally afraid of a woman. And she knows who she is, and she knows that she's just as frightening as men.
Now leave us, the lot of you. I need to talk to Ned.
Robert, my sweet.
Out, all of you!
This is the peak moment of her uncertainty when Ned, who knows the truth about her children, is being left alone with the person she least wants to know this truth. That's, I think, a very precarious moment for her. There's nothing she can do about it. And all he really has to do is say the words. It would set into motion a chain of events that it would release a tide that Cersei would probably be powerless to turn back.
To tell someone who's got a few minutes left to live, by the way, your kids, they're not really your kids. Your wife has been having an affair with her twin brother this whole time. It's a little sadistic, and so Ned doesn't want to do that to his best friend.
You'll rule now. Until my son, Joffrey, comes of age.
Ned does, one of the very few deceitful things probably in Ned Stark's entire life, which is he changes the wording ever so slightly. He wants Robert to leave this world with some measure of peace. So he's trying to preserve that peace for his dying friend. At the same time, he's trying to make sure that the throne doesn't pass to someone who doesn't deserve it, which would be Joffrey Baratheon. Ned is convinced that the rightful heir is the next in line, which is the next oldest brother, Stannis.
Stannis is a commander. Do you still believe good soldiers make good kings?
Stannis' ascension to the throne is the law in this case, and Ned's going to abide by that and not make the kind of arrangement that he would need to make to come out of this fight victorious.
What's best for the people we rule? This isn't about the bloody line of succession. That didn't matter when you rebelled against the Mad King. It shouldn't matter now.
Renly's point is, my brother became king. He didn't have any claim on the throne. He led a rebellion and overthrew the last king, and that's the only reason why he was king. So to be a stickler about the whole line of succession doesn't make a whole lot of sense when you were my brother's biggest supporter in this rebellion that overthrew the rightful king.
Give me an hour and I can put 100 swords at your command. I will not dishonor Robert's last hours by shedding blood in his halls.
Ned understands this point. It's a pretty good point. At the same time, Ned just doesn't think Renly is going to be a good king either. Whether or not Ned was right there, he lost a potential ally, and losing that ally turns out to have significant consequences.
Tywin Lannister is very present throughout the story from the first episode. He's someone who weighs large on the story and on the lives of these people, especially the Lannisters, but you've never actually seen him.
Lannisters don't act like fools.
He's so fierce and formidable, and at the same time, really ambitious.
It's the family name that lives on. It's all that lives on.
Charles Dance plays Tywin, and he got in there with a real dead stag and over again recut the skin, retook the innards and dropped them in the bucket 50 times in a row, and it didn't seem to faze him.
Once you see Tywin, you completely understand who Cersei is, who Tyrion is, and who Jaime is, and why they are the way they are.
He's the ultimate scary father who's never impressed with anything you do, and he's always going to be disappointed.
I need you to become the man you were always meant to be. Now.
Your sister knew perfectly well we were to leave today. How she could forget it?
She didn't forget. She's with her dancing master. She's with him every morning. She always comes back with scrapes and bruises. She's so clumsy.
Hush. Go back to your room. Bar the doors. And do not open them for anyone you do not know.
What is it? What's happening?
Do as I told you. Run!
Cersei is much more ruthless, so she's willing to use Ned's children as pawns in a way that Ned was not willing to use Cersei's children.
They come for Arya, and luckily for Arya, she has a protector who realizes there's something strange about this situation and who's willing to fight to the death to give her the chance to escape.
Arya, child, we are done with dancing for the day. Run to your father.
She's romanticized sword fighting, and she sees the dark side of this for the first time, really. And all the training she's had really comes to the fore, where the main lesson he's taught her, where it's just about surviving, about taking your focus and focusing on death, not getting its hands on you in this moment and on this day. And here the kid comes along who thinks he's found a nice, easy score. He can bring this girl to the queen, and he unfortunately just didn't realize and didn't reckon with the fact that this girl knows what to do with a sword.
I think this season is kind of a series of nasty awakenings for Arya, for many of the characters.
Please, Your Grace, there's been a mistake. Send for my father, he'll tell you. The king was his friend.
You're just seeing Sansa on one side of the table, and then the four most heavy-hitting, underhanded double dealers in the world on the other side of the table.
Sansa's being manipulated here to do the Queen's will.
Sansa, sweetly, you were innocent of any wrong, we know that. Yet you are the daughter of a traitor. How can I allow you to marry my son?
It's a little bit of a good cops, bad cops thing where Pycelle is the bad cop, and he's saying she's the whelp of a traitor, and we can never trust her, and maybe she looks sweet and innocent now, but someday she's going to grow up and do horrible things. Whereas Littlefinger and Varys are saying, oh, but come on, she didn't do anything. It's not her fault that her father committed these crimes, and she's a sweet young girl and still a good match for Joffrey. And the Queen is kind of pretending that she's listening to counsel on both sides, when really they've always had this plan.
Treason.
They want Sansa to write this letter to Robb.
Sansa wrote this.
It is your sister's hand, but the Queen's words. You're summoned to King's Landing to swear fealty to the new king.
Robb has had leadership thrust upon him at a time in his life when he's not completely ready for it. And this is the first real test of authority that he has when he has all of these older, more seasoned men who have nominal allegiance to his father.
It's a test, and the Great John is this big, powerful guy who's been to war, and he disrespects Robb.
I'll not sit here and swallow insults from a boy so green it pisses grass!
And the way Robb deals with that is going to explain, it's going to inform how people treat him from that point on. So it's a little bit like, the whole prison story of your first night in prison, someone's gonna push you, and so this is kind of like Robb's prison yard encounter, and he's got the big convict testing him.
Tyrion and Bronn no sooner outwit and escape Lysa and the people in the Eyrie, and they are then abducted and kidnapped again by the Stone Crows.
How would you like to die, Tyrion, son of Tywin?
In my own bed? At the age of 80?
Tyrion's someone who's always been a disappointment to his father literally from the moment of his birth. His mother died giving birth to him. From their point of view, this mother and wife that they loved died giving birth to this imp. So they've never had much affection for Tyrion. Only Jaime, his older brother, really ever treated him with kindness.
Time to meet my father.
Tywin has always been really ashamed of him. And you see a bit of that when Tyrion returns, and Tywin had thought he might be dead, and he didn't seem particularly upset about the thought that Tyrion might be dead.
The rumors of your demise were unfounded. Sorry to disappoint you.
To make matters worse, he also has to explain to his father that, oh, by the way, I'm also being held captive by the Stone Crows, and I promised them a lot of stuff.
You get to see who Tywin is as both a father and a military commander, because he's not all that thrilled that his son's returning, but these hill tribesmen that he brings back could be useful because they are renowned for being vicious fighters and they're great cannon fodder.
Ride with me against my enemies and you shall have all my son promised you and more.
Only if the half-man fights with us. Until we hold the steel he pledged us, the little lion's life is ours.
Tribesmen of the Vale! Onward to claim what is yours! Half-man! 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 To battle! Hold on! Wait!
Game of Thrones is very much about how you handle family and how being true to family can be the best thing about you and can also destroy you. And Tyrion, who's usually so cynical, we see the other side to him in relation to the shift from his father.
You're wounded. Good of you to notice.
That sarcasm is armor and is protecting something. And this tension between them tells a lot about why he is the way he is.
Dany's high point with the Horde is probably when she eats the stallion heart and they really are behind their queen. And then she starts doing things that they frown upon. For instance, when Drogo gets sick, people start to blame her because she had this sorceress treat him. And, you know, blood magic goes very much against the Dothraki code.
Save him and I will free you, I swear it.
There is a spell.
Magic is pushed to the periphery of this world, and literally, I mean, it's way far across the Narrow Sea in the east, and it's way north of the Wall. And also, it's very peripheral to people's daily lives. This isn't a world where a wizard shows up with a big pointy hat and a staff and creates all sorts of magical displays.
What have you done?
This is a world that is more like our own world in terms of the role the supernatural has in it, but Miri is a source of actual magic.
Ned wants to do the right thing, always. The right thing here clearly is not to lie. Ned's not going to support Joffrey's claim to the throne when it's so clearly a fallacious claim.
Tell the Queen you will confess your vile treason. Tell your son to lay down his sword and proclaim Joffrey as the true heir.
Varys tries to appeal to him, partly just by saying, look, there's going to be war otherwise, and is that what you want? I mean, regardless of who's got the right claim, regardless of line of succession, all the rest of it, and that means thousands of people dying, it means innocents dying, it means towns being burned down and people starving and all the rest of it. Is it worth it?
You think my life is some precious thing to me, that I would trade my honor for a few more years of what?
The one thing that finally persuades him to abandon his honor is his love of his children.
What of your daughter's life, my lord? Is that a precious thing to you?
Ned believes that the Lannisters will hold their end of the bargain, not because he has any particular trust in them, but because it's the best thing for them to do to ensure their power.
It's his insistence on doing the right thing in a very corrupt world that not only leads to his destruction, but imperils the things he would try to protect.
Traditionally, in a book, whether it's fantasy or any other genre, you might do a terrible thing to a side character. You know, you might murder off a minor character, but you're not going to kill Tony Soprano.
I come before you to confess my treason. I plotted to seize the throne for myself. Joffrey Baratheon is the one true heir to the Iron Throne.
You get to that scene thinking, how's he going to get out of this one? Wow, he's up there, and the tide is definitely turned against him, but it feels like it's time for things to turn back around and for some 11th hour salvation to pluck him from the jaws of death.
What is to be done with this traitor?
Something's going to come along to save him because obviously Ned's not going to die, it's Ned. And then it doesn't.
Bring me his head.
The It's great to be surprised in that way. And I can only hope that the people who come to the show without having read the books will have the same holy shit response that I had when I read the book, because it was a big holy shit for me.
You look lovely tonight, Lady Stark. Widowhood becomes you. Your bed must be lonely. Is that why you came?
One thing that I think Catelyn has shown over the course of this story is that she, sometimes to a fault, has more than enough courage to protect her children.
One son is paralyzed, one husband is dead, her daughter is held by the enemy forces. She's had a rough season. Despite being such a great mother, we see that she's got violent passions as well, and she's not protecting her son from them.
We will kill them all.
Arya is strong and she's resilient, but to be yanked right from that unimaginable trauma of witnessing Ned's head come off and being given no time to mourn or no time to process it, it's a heavy weight to carry.
Keep your mouth shut, boy.
I'm not a boy!
It was sort of a liberating scene in a way for her, because she's always chafed against being a girl, but in a way she's coming into her own and being sort of liberated to be who she really is.
What's your name?
She can't let anyone know that she's Arya Stark, because if she's found out to be Arya Stark, she becomes a pawn in this game that the Queen is playing, and the Queen is going to snatch her back and use her as a hostage.
It's 1,000 leagues from here to the wall, and winter is coming.
Arya is so driven by revenge, and things get increasingly dangerous for her in the second season. She's a little bit like her older half-brother Jon Snow.
Move. I won't let you go.
Jon will lose his temper at the slightest provocation.
Jon has finally found his place in the world, but he already had a place in the world. He had a family, and he had brothers, and he had a father, and he had a home. When that family's in trouble, his instinct is to go join Robb, but he's pulled back by his new brothers.
You took the oath, he can't leave.
He's going to avenge the death of his father, and it's his friends who remind him what his father would have done in this kind of situation.
Was a moonlight ride that tiring?
Mormont's a very practical guy. He doesn't want to lose Jon Snow, who's a potential great leader of the Night's Watch, because he had a moment of wavering about his vows. The fact is, he returned, and that's the important thing to him.
Do you think your brother's war is more important than ours? When dead men, and worse, come hunting for us in the night, do you think it matters who sits on the Iron Throne?
They're up against something that's a lot bigger than themselves, and there's this game that's being played in the South, and then there's what's happening north of the Wall, which is the kind of thing that will make all the intrigues in the South look like a game. And they're going to go out instead of waiting for it to come to them.
Miri Maz-Dur is a priestess of the Lamb people, and she sees a chance to get revenge, not only to avenge her people, but also to prevent this guy from doing it again to other people. From her point of view, it's completely just what she does.
This is not life. When will he be as he was?
When the sun rises in the west, sets in the east.
She has a pretty good point. I mean, these people did come in, completely rape, pillage, and murder her entire village.
Of course, from Daenerys' point of view, this woman betrayed her. She put her trust in this woman after showing her kindness, and now the woman has turned around and betrayed that kindness. And again, it's a theme throughout the story that, you know, no good deed goes unpunished.
Ser Jorah, bind this woman to the pyre.
You have people doing terrible things to people that you love, and yet if you were in their shoes and you knew what they know, you would probably do the same thing. Everybody is doing what they're doing for reasons that are grounded in real human psychology and not in the fact that they're wearing a white hat or that they're wearing a black hat. Daenerys had an understanding that she has to give herself over to something larger than herself without knowing exactly what's going to happen, but she knows that when she walks into that pyre, she's not going to burn up. Never in her mind is it an act of suicide, even though in the minds of everybody around her, that's of course what it looks like.
It's the crucial climax, and Daenerys is standing there in the pyre, and she's become the mother of dragons, and the woman you would follow to the ends of the world, because that's what those remaining followers are going to do.
Dragons in this world are the ultimate source of power, and in a world where authority is derived directly from power, they're the ultimate source of authority, and the people who had dragons were the people who shaped the world.
Dragons are magical, but they're also supposed to be, in this world, real creatures. And so we were looking at bats and pterodactyls and other kind of great flying creatures like that for inspiration, and always wanting them to look real. We don't want these to look like magical creatures that have just popped up.
If they survive to maturity and they grow to the size of school buses or however large they end up getting as their mother, she becomes a very different person than the frightened little girl we saw being sold off to a barbarian in the first episode.